So my Wi-Fi connection has returned. Just a quick word, if you've just subscribed to my channel, welcome. The actual introduction video I have is about 5 years old now. I'm probably going to have to update that. But I have noticed that my subscriber count has grown. I've had about another 20 new subscriptions in the last sort of week or so. So it's growing, so welcome if you've joined. Feel free to share my videos, feel free to leave comments. I'll try to get back to comments, but I can't guarantee that I'll respond to each and every one simply for time reasons. But anyway, thank you if you're watching or if you have subscribed. So to get to the point of this one, I want to talk a bit about political ideology, my political ideology. And this is something I could span out on, very, very broadly, but for the purpose of this video, I want to stick to something specifically, and namely, it's why I stopped calling myself a liberal. So a little bit of background here. I was a member of the Liberal Democrat Party, which is traditionally Britain's third largest political party, from 2005 to 2010. I even stood for council election twice in Sunderland. You can find my name on Wikipedia, and I've no problem, being open about that. I obviously didn't win, although I did triple my own results second time round, from 2008 to 2010 in those two council elections. I did get a higher result, but that may have reflected the party swing generally. Um, I'm pleased I took part in the political process. I canvassed as well, both in Sunderland and in the West Midlands. I sort of had mixed feelings in that 2010 election when Nick Clegg famously joined the coalition. My thinking at the time was, okay, I'll give the coalition a chance because I genuinely felt that Clegg was being politically practical at the time. But I felt his positions on some issues I felt strongly about just didn't align with the way I felt about things. For example, I think he was giving too much ground to the Tories on welfare issues, and he was sort of using similar language to the Tories on that, I felt at the time, and I did not respect that. That's actually why I left the Lib Dems. It was maybe the primary reason, but the other reason actually was more of a right-wing reason. So I kind of had mixed feelings, and that was that I could not reconcile my hardline views on crime with the Lib Dems' liberal views on crime and liberal positions on crime. I felt that I was trying to represent a party whose policy positions on that, whilst not as radical as some other left wing parties, they just weren't something I could really align with. I'm very much a social conservative when it comes to crime. I've never shied away from admitting that. I believe if you terrorize society, you pay a price. And I'm not really interested in any argument that seeks to kind of take away responsibility from the criminal and from young offenders in particular. I'm a pretty hard line person when it comes to crime. There's just no getting around that. Probably not the most hard line. For example, I'm not comfortable with the death penalty, but yeah, I'm a social conservative when it comes to crime. Um, and that's kind of perhaps the main reason I left. So I was uncomfortable from perhaps a left wing perspective on the welfare issue, and yet I was uncomfortable from a right wing perspective on the crime issue. It's like Clegg was being right wing where I didn't want him to be right wing, and left wing where I didn't want him to be left wing. But it wasn't just about Nick Clegg, it was a general trajectory of the party. I joined the party under Charles Kennedy's leadership, and I respected Kennedy for his position on the Iraq War. I opposed the Iraq War, and I thought Kennedy was generally a strong leader. And one has to remember that Nick Clegg was electorally speaking the most successful Liberal since David Lloyd George. It's no small thing. So he certainly made his mark on British political history. Um, but basically, leaving aside party politics, leaving aside the Liberal Democrats, why did I abandon calling myself liberal in general? At that time, in the late 2000s, I broadly did call myself a liberal, but I found that it certainly didn't align with my views on crime. I couldn't, with a straight face, call myself a liberal whilst I advocated basically a hardline conservative attitude to crime. It just didn't align. Now, liberal can mean a lot of different things. In Australia, the Liberal Party is actually the Conservative Party. You know, it's a right-wing Conservative Party in Australia. So, I believe in Russia, the Liberal Party is actually ultra-nationalistic. It was led by Vladimir Zhirinovsky, and they were called the Liberal Party, unless I'm mistaken. If I'm mistaken about that, I believe I read that. So liberal, it can have different meanings in different parts of the world, but generally, as a concept, it also has to be understood as traditional liberalism. And I'm still interested in the liberalism of William Ewart Gladstone and David Lloyd George, two of our greatest statesmen. Um, but kind of new liberalism of the brand of the Liberal Democrats and of the American left is something that I don't entirely align with. Now, when we talk about liberalism, that can refer to liberal democracy, which is basically the democratic form of government throughout the Western world, regardless of whether it's a conservative government or a left-wing government. The general model is liberal democracy. So in that sense, that's beyond party politics. It's liberal democracy in the sense that it's a strong emphasis on freedom of expression, freedom of assembly, human liberty, egalitarianism, human rights. All these things are an essential, fundamental part of liberal democracy. And it's not that Western democracies have a perfect record, far from it, but it's that those things are generally highly valued. And when they are violated, that is exposed by a free media. So that's what we mean by liberal democracy. And in that sense, I'm very, very much in favor of liberal democracy as opposed to, for example, Chinese totalitarianism, just as an example. There's other examples. But I don't call myself a liberal in the party political sense because it's not just the issue about crime, it's also about, for example, Islamist terrorism. I believe, certainly the Liberal Democrats, but I believe too many liberals in general are far too politically correct when it comes to issues like Islamic extremism. I think the behaviour or the response of the Liberal Democrats to issues like the grooming gangs and certainly Islamist terrorism is pretty much pathetic, similar to what the Labour Party and the Green Party have responded to, and even to some extent the Conservative Party. I think there's just too much political correctness in party politics, way too much. Um, and that comes at the price of honesty, it comes at the price of public safety, and really just accountability. Because if you're going to be politically correct about something like the grooming gang scandal, which is one of the worst crimes, collectively speaking, in this country's modern history, that really is, in my opinion, moral cowardice. So I've no respect for that sort of political correctness, i.e., let's not talk about the problem because the perpetrators are primarily British Pakistani men, which is just a fact. Um, so I associate modern liberalism with political correctness. I associate modern liberalism with the worst sort of identity politics. Um, Towing a victimhood narrative and issues like Oscars So White. I mean, a thought occurred to me, and actually, the Chinese actress Bai Ling actually raised this point. I saw a quotation by her No particular reason. I was just looking her up earlier, just information about her because she's kind of went off the scene. But something she apparently said was Asian actors shouldn't expect special treatment in Hollywood because the majority market audience for Hollywood films is white Americans. Majority of the United States is still white. So why should there be special treatment for Asian actors? Why should they expect special treatment, i.e., to get awards just for the sake of being Asian Americans? When if a white actor went to the Far East, he or she wouldn't get special treatment. And that's a very important point. Not just the Far East, but if we look at Bollywood, how many non-Indian actors are in Bollywood? These are points that haven't been raised by Oscar So White. Now, it might sound like I'm digressing from the point here, but this is the sort of mentality that liberals have. And American liberals, they're world professionals when it comes to political correctness and identity politics. Their whole mantra is about virtue signaling. Um, Now, to me, this doesn't mean you have to revert to Trumpian style, bombastic right wing nationalism, okay? Because I'm also very critical of that. I'm very critical of Donald Trump. So, when I describe myself as a centrist, that to me is absolutely truthful to how I feel about things. If I called myself a liberal, that would be kind of saying I endorse the sort of things that self-described liberals come out with. Now, some of my positions probably could be described as pretty liberal. For example, my views on LGBT rights are broadly liberal. Um, my views on a number of other issues can probably be described as liberal. But my views on crime are certainly not liberal, they're pretty conservative. Um, my views on something like transgender issues, for example, I support civil and humane treatment of transgender people, but I do not accept this dogmatic notion that if someone calls himself a woman, that makes it true. As far as I'm concerned, if you were born with a penis, you cannot say that you are a woman in the sense of biological women. That's one where I actually agree with the feminists on. So when it comes to politics, I am just true to myself. And I think it would be insincere for me to describe myself as a liberal because there's a lot of positions I am not liberal on. I'm pretty hard line when it comes to crime, like I keep saying, but it's an important point. Terrorism, I'm pretty hard line. For example, I believe if there's an active terrorist, I believe in a shoot to kill policy if there is absolutely no other choice. You know, if you have a rampaging gunman, I absolutely think the police should have a right to shoot him or her dead on the spot to prevent more casualties. So, on issues like that, I'm not liberal. But my strong belief in human rights, perhaps people would determine that to be a liberal position. I don't think it is. To me, human rights should transcend any politics, but, it will be portrayed as it is portrayed. So, anyway, that's just some thoughts. Um, Ultimately, I think how other people see us is beyond our control, really. Um, I just, I'm just true to myself, but I don't call myself a liberal. Some of my positions are liberal, and I certainly am a strong advocate of liberal democracy. But I think within liberal democracy, you can have liberalism, you can have conservatism, even democratic socialism. I don't entirely agree with those Americans who say democratic socialism always leads to communism. I don't think that's a fair assessment. I mean, Keir Starmer has described himself as a socialist, and okay, time will tell, but I really don't think any reasonable person would describe Sir Keir Starmer as a communist. So, you know, that's basically how I see things. That's why I do not call myself a liberal. But just for the record, I wouldn't call myself a conservative generally either. I'm a conservative on crime, but I'm not conservative because I'm not conservative on other issues. I mean, I take a fairly liberal approach on immigration. I don't believe in pulling up the drawbridge, for example, although I do believe in strong vetting. I take a pretty middle ground approach to immigration. Um, my stance on Brexit would probably be described as liberal because I voted Remain. I felt in my gut that we were better staying in the EU. Um, so I have positions that people will probably see as liberal, but other positions that are conservative. Ultimately, it comes down to centrism. And I accept that's a little bit vague, but to me, it's the most truthful place I can be. Thanks for watching.